Welcome to Tête-a-Tech. For those of you joining us for the first time, we launched this series of dialogues about a year ago to encourage more information sharing between tech players, entrepreneurs, investors of Silicon Valley and Brazil. So thank you for joining us. And today we have a special conversation with two entrepreneurs and an investor to give us a sense of how this pandemic is impacted the tech entrepreneurship scenario in Brazil. So I have the pleasure to welcome Manoel Lemos, Managing Director and Partner at Redpoint Eventures, Eric Santos, co-founder and CEO of RD Station, and Tatianapimenta, founder and CEO of Vittute. I invited Manoel to moderate the session. So thank you, Manoel, for joining us. And you that are joining us both at Zoom and Facebook, please send us questions, comments, and thanks for participating. Manuel.
Okay. So hi everybody. It's great to be with all of you here. It's crazy times that we're living, and it's always good to have the opportunity to listen from people that are on the trenches, running their business, suffering the impacts of what's happening, because we can learn a lot with them. And Margarese, thanks again for inviting us for this conversation and for everything you have been doing for our ecosystem from Silicon Valley at Bay Brazil. So we are big fans since the beginning. So it's always good to see you now that we're not traveling that much. So Zoom is going to be our next home, right?
Great. Great to see you too, Manuel.
Yeah, we have here today two people that have the lucky to be very close to them. Both are founders and CEO of companies in our portfolios. Eric, CEO of Resultados Digitais, RD Station, and Tati, that just joined our portfolio a few months ago, right, Tati, from Vittute. To start, I would love to give them the space to tell a little bit about what they do, because that's gonna help us to understand where they're placed in the ecosystem, which stage your company is. It's two different companies here. And what were the immediate changes and actions that you had to take when you first learned about what was happening regarding the COVID pandemic? So we can start with Tati, youngest in the portfolio first.
Women's first. Hey, thank you, Manuel. So I'm Tatiana, I'm founder and CEO at Vittute. Vittute is a HIPAA-compliant marketplace that connects psychologists and patients. And we have a solution for enterprise. So we connect our psychologists to employers to make it easy to them to manage workforce well-being and wellness. And our company has 4 years. We were invested by Redpoint in last November. And I think we are struggling a little bit because of the demand. So our demand has grew up like 300% since this started. We have a lot of people seeking for mental health care providers, and a lot of companies looking for some kind of service to take care of their employees in this period of social isolation and pandemics. So we have some challenges, and one of them is scaling the company and scaling some hirings in this period when we are everybody on home office. We have to recruit, hire, and onboard new people with in a very fast way. So this is a little bit of Vittute now.
That's interesting that we didn't knew about the pandemic and we did the investment a few months before. I believe we all need that now. But Eric was somehow connected to that because Resultados Digitais was one of the customers of Vittute, and we use them as part of our due diligence process. So Eric, I know that you are very concerned about the people inside of RD. So it's great if you could connect both stories and tell a little bit about what's happening with you.
Sure. Let me start that. By the way, Margarese, again, thanks for putting this together and for fostering the community. It's always a pleasure to contribute to Bay Brazil. And it's great to be here too, to people that I admire a lot. I think that, just to connect with Tati here, it's something that personally, I didn't know much about how important this is to employees in general up to a couple of years ago. And then it's something that we've invested a lot at RD. And definitely we've seen a spike in terms of demand internally and probably Tati has seen that too, in this special moment where everyone is working from home and then having a lot of insecurity about their future, about the crisis in general, and about their jobs. So I think this is definitely a point of concern for every entrepreneur running their companies now, beyond anything on the financial side, which is also very important. So just to quickly introduce myself, my name is Eric Santos. I'm the CEO, co-founder of RD Station. I've been a tech entrepreneur for almost 20 years now, but RD is is 9 years old now. We've been around for this time we have the leading marketing automation sales platform in Latin America. So we have two products now. We have about 16,000 customers, about 700 employees, distributed usually in 4 different offices. Now everybody is working from home. And so far we've raised almost $100 million in funding. The last round was led by River Capital right in around September last year, and Redpoint, who's been one of our investors since our Series B, also participated in that round too. So I think that in terms of immediate impacts, and I'm trying to also take advantage of the vantage point that I have of not only being at RD, but also, by sitting on the board of Endeavor and CERT Foundation. So we see a lot of different companies there, and also by talking to other entrepreneurs and some of our customers and partners too. I think that overall, the first reaction was, let's make sure that everyone is safe. All the employees are safe, are up and running and productive, working from their homes. In our case, the second biggest priority was, let's try to understand what our customers and partners are going through now to see how we can help them in this crisis. And this has been an ongoing process. I can share more about that, the learnings there too. And the third priority was, okay, let's try to understand what that really means to us, and what kind of impact scenarios that we can face in the future, and what kind of leading indicators we might have for those impact scenarios, and also what kind of contingency plans that we can put together to face those scenarios. So this combination of 3 things were my main priorities for the first few weeks. And then now I think that the story is still unfolding, but now, at least for the last few weeks, we've been started working on special opportunities that came up in this period too. So happy to share more about that later.
That's a great point. I participated in a live with Bruno. I don't know if it was today in the morning or yesterday in the morning. And one thing that I believe that we're seeing is we had this first group of actions that everybody had to take when we learned about what was happening, which was, let's take care of our people, let's take care of our runway and let's do all the planning, scenario analysis, and contingency plans because this is a big wave. We don't know how big and how deep it is, and you need to have enough oxygen to pass through the wave. And now what we're seeing is people getting more understanding of what's happening. Is still a lot of uncertainty, but some people are starting to say, okay, how that's going to change the environment, and what can we do? Because one thing that we're seeing talking with our portfolio companies, and those has been crazy months, like 48 companies, we're talking with the companies every week, is that a few companies are having really interesting tailwinds from the COVID crisis. And all of them are having different levels of headwinds. So everybody's going to suffer, but some companies have a lot of opportunities on that. So Tati, I believe that's happening with you. That's a huge spike in demand. What you guys are doing in this second move, you know, looking in a more calm way, you had put your operations in a remote operation, you're somehow safe. How are you guys organizing the life of your companies from now on?
Okay. Let's start.
Go ahead, Tati. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I think one thing is that we don't have enough information yet. Everything is uncertain. There's no clarity, so we have to make some scenarios every week. I was talking some minutes ago to Carol, that's from Redpoint also, that we did a lot of scenarios in the first week and the second week, and then I give up because it don't make sense anymore. I was planning like, we're going to stay flat or we're going to grow like 10% in this crisis, but we grew up like 35% in March, and in April we were projecting like 50% of growing. So now we are going just looking calm to what is happening, what kind of literally picking my fights, because I can do everything. So what kind of clients I want to deserve the better service to them? What are the opportunities that I can in fact absorb and work for, and then deliver a service in a way that they stay happy, and we can help. In fact, we closed 2 big deals here in Vittute, one with Raia Drogasil, that's more than 60,000 lives, and the other one with Grupo Boticário, 20,000 lives. So these 2 deals just stopped at Vittute because we decided, okay, let's do everything right here. And then we start to look again to the market. So everybody's going to focus and deliver the better service we have here.
That's interesting, Tati. And Eric, you guys are in a different situation, a bigger company. You raised at a large round. Bruno mentioned that you are changing the mindset into an attack, not just a defense mindset. How the COVID is changing the mindset inside our RD station?
Yeah, well, based on what I see in the market, I see few companies have this strong tailwind, such as Vittute. A little bit more companies have very strong headwind. Companies that operate in segments that basically had their revenue vanished in a matter of days. But most of the companies, the vast majority, at least from the companies that I see, they've had some relevant impact in the company, but not that meaningful in terms of, you know, having to really pivot from overnight. Like, it's just a matter of adjusting the, you know, the burn rate, adjusting the structure, adjusting the service model, whatever. But now that I think the dust is settling a little bit, and again, based on our experience and some of the things that I learned talking to other entrepreneurs, is that everyone is facing a little bit of tailwind in a way. everybody's trying to figure out what that is and how to double down on that. So in our case specifically, of course, luckily we didn't have many customers in the travel segments or events or physical retail, so it hasn't been that much of an issue for us so far. But of course, we cannot sell to any customers in those segments now. So it's, all of a sudden we lost like 10%, 15% of our pipeline that was coming to the sales reps. But on the other hand, some segments and some companies in those segments, they actually wanted to accelerate the digital transformation that they wanted to do for so long, but it was never a priority for them. But now it's basically a necessity because they have to do that. So just to give you an example, most companies that have traditional field sales teams or channel sales teams, they want to do inbound sales, but they never really prioritized that before this crisis. Now they have to do inbound sales because there's no other way to sell their products or service. So it's a good way to accelerate those companies that were, in the process of thinking about implementing that. And also some other specific opportunities that might not move the needle in the short term, but it can make us really stronger in the long term. So two of them that I can talk about. One is that, with all this crisis, especially amplified with everything that's going on in Brazil, politically speaking, including the facts from today, the FX rate went up very significantly. And right now, last time I checked, the dollar to real rate was at 5.74, if I'm not mistaken. And, coming from 4 in the beginning of the year. So what happens is all of our American competitors suddenly get a way more expensive for their clients. And now it's an opportunity for us to gain market share, even if that means that we need to be a little bit more aggressive in terms of acquiring those customers and not worrying too much about unit economics and that kind of stuff. The second thing, and I think that's very, very savvy advice that I heard from Byron Deaton from Bessemer, is that at the end of the day, I think most companies will get a hall pass for the performance in Q2 and Q3 in 2020. And there's always those little things that you want to do internally, but you never have time to do that, or never have the bandwidth to do that, either in terms of revenue or just mental energy to do that. And now it's the right time to do that. So as Manoel knows, we have some opportunities in our acquisition retention funnels that we've been looking at those for a long time, and it's always like, oh, it's not the right time yet, so we know that's the right thing, but let's not do that yet. But now we're doing that because we're gonna if we do that and tap this opportunity, we come out of this stronger in a more efficient and more sustainable way. So I think that most companies are starting to realize the specific opportunities that are in front of them, and that's even before the realization that a new world suddenly appeared, and have this long-term trends that would change everything that we know about the world. They're not there yet, but there are very specific opportunities that every company may attack now, and it's something that we're trying to do at RD now.
That's really, really good to hear. One thing that we have a few questions here that people sent to Bay Brazil before. I believe some of them we already touched here, but there is one thing that is what changed in the dynamics in the board level, and also at the management team level, in terms of how you're changing decisions, what changed in the mindset. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we're seeing at boards. We're present in several boards. The first thing was these, we had to be very, how can I say, comprehensive in terms of what we're looking for, because there are so many things happening at the same time that if you are focused on only a certain aspects of the business, you may miss what's happening after. I mean, the aftershock of what's happening. If you look, for example, on your top line change, and it's not happening yet, but eventually that's going to happen a few weeks later with your customers, and then with the customers of your customers, and then you can see the impact arriving, like the second order and third order effect. So that's one thing that we're asking the companies to look for is, okay, think more as a chess game. You have to understand the pieces, but what can happen if things change for these parts of the business. Another thing is be very, very concerned with cash. Cash became it's super important for startups. Now it's even more, because we believe that liquidity is going to be changing at least for a while. I don't think that tech is going to get out of the investment focus, especially because we know that tech and digital infrastructure is going to be very important for the future, especially after on these new normal environment. But maybe if you need cash now, that could be a problem. So you have to be concerned on that, with that. And more importantly is try to create a framework to understand what's happening with your company, because things are going to behave in a different way. You need to learn before they happen that something big is going to happen. So that's what RD is doing with the lead indicators. I believe that since the day zero, right there, we were asking, okay, what are the ways that we can measure and anticipate the future? So that's one thing. And another interesting thing is people have to take decisions with way less data, with a lot more uncertainty, and not taking the decisions could be generate some damage. So you need to understand and create the right mindset, the right environment, that we're going to make some mistakes, but you're going to have to make some choices. So every day is a different game. There are companies that saw their revenues from 100% to 5% in 2 weeks. And that's a major, major change. You cannot wait 2 more weeks to make a decision, right? So that's the type of scenario that we're seeing now. So how does that change the inside of Vittute, Tati? I know that you had to, you start to have different type of customers knocking at your door to say, hey, I'm not a psychologist, but I want to use your platform. How that's changing the way you think on your roadmap and take decisions inside of Vittute?
Yeah, one important thing is to keep in mind that's the mindset's changing. We have a regulation to use therapy, online therapy, since November 2018, but till February, most of the psychologists in the country didn't adopt the online therapy. So most of them, I risk like 90% of the psychologists in Brazil also used to have their sessions with their patients on the office. And from the night to the day, they have to change their mindset, or they are going to stay without any revenue to survive. So we have here something happening, that most of the psychologists were forced by the coronavirus to attend online. So this changing mindset, I think that's going to stay for long, and that's we are going to have more professionals using this kind of technology to connect patients to everywhere. And we have here in Brazil regulations being started, like telemedicine. We have nutrition, we have physical health. All the regulations that were for years in discussion were approved in 3 weeks. So we have a lot of adoption now with the telehealth service. I think this came to stay, and it's going to be the future. For me, this is the great change in my area. And when I look to the companies, I think there's a point that a lot of managers also discussed about budget. So they are going, I don't have budget to do this. I have my health insurance plan. I don't need this. And now they are looking to mental health as a way to get their team engaged, productive, self. So they want their team to be safe. They want their team to be engaged, producing, because all the companies are working yet. So they are on remote work, but they need to do their job. They need to deliver results. So if they are not well, they're going to take wrong decisions. And when we do talk about, I read an article from Steve Blank, and he was talking about now we don't have time to think and to have consensus. So the CEOs are going to have to take that decision fast. So the more the top level, the C-level are very, very pressured. So we have to take care of their mental health in order to them to have clear decision and make them more assertive. We are going to fail some way, but we are going to take a lot of good actions because we're taking care of ourselves. So this looking to the way of mental health, a lot of companies are very, very worried with their management team. So I think this is the most changing thing now, because till February, everybody's just looking for a kind of, this is a benefit. And now they are looking more as a kind of soft skills development than from benefit. I think this is, so they are looking at Vittute and asking us to pay attention and to deliver a service, but to mitigate risk, to make their employees more engaged, more productive. So it's not about a benefit, it's about to stay safe and stay productive and stay mindful.
Manoel, if I can add a question about this to Tatiana. So you said that CEOs are concerned about their management team. Are you seeing cases of stress, anxiety related to this pandemic?
Yes, a lot. We have a lot of people arriving to the Vittute website and platform. Last month, we received 2.2 million people in our platform. And most of the case, people were looking for content from anxiety and then from stress and burnout. We are listening people saying about a lot of work at home because they are at home, but they are not in a kind of home office because their kids are at home also. They are not at school. So I'm working from home, but my kids are here and everybody's working at inside of the home. So the stress is higher. So people need to manage this stress and need to know what to do with this scenario and to stay well. So I think this is an issue for every company. It's for every of us. So we need to take care of ourselves before to take care of our employees. So I think the CEOs and the C-level have a mission to stay healthy and stay mindful to take care of their team.
I think Tati brought two very interesting points that relate really well with Manuel's question about the board dynamics. Because on one hand, we do feel that a big part of our job as CEOs now is to manage anxiety, not only from the team, but also from the exec team and from the board. And there are a lot of different ways to do that, but with my exec team, one of the things that we started discussing now is that, okay, for the last 6 weeks, we've put our hats of wartime execs. Now we have to gradually transition towards the peacetime execs, in the sense that the way that we ran our company in the last 6 weeks is not too sustainable in the longer term. So we need to be mindful that we don't want to lose the sense of urgency but we need to be mindful that we're in this for the long haul, and this is a marathon that's just getting started. So when we started this work, it felt like a sprint, and it definitely helped that we treated it as a sprint for the first few weeks. But now we need to treat it as a marathon, and that anxiety also came up in the conversations with board members and investors from AD. So, and on one hand, I felt the empathy of, I know that everybody's concerned, they're seeing all this data, they're having, this perspective from many companies. By the way, it gave me a higher level of appreciation for the contribution that the board can bring to the company because of that. But at the same time, it was very stressful to me too. And I actually had to, to talk to the board members and say, guys, it's not very productive if you call me every day to know what's going on. Like, let's establish a rhythm here. Let's establish a way to communicate, because I'm seeing a lot of things that you're not seeing, and of course you're seeing a lot of things that I'm not seeing. But let's have a forum to discuss that, and not just random one-on-one conversations here. So I think that the managing anxiety is one of the challenges that we have now. And the other part that Tati mentioned that I really like is that we do have to make decisions faster now, both internally, and RD is a very data-driven company. So we ponder a lot of data before making any decision, and now we're having to make decisions with 50% of the data available, 60% of the data available. And I think that dynamics is also present at the board level too. So I think we're getting, we're making decisions that we used to have like 2 or 3 meetings to make decisions like that. So we will bring the subject in one meeting, and then discuss and bring more data in the second meeting, and then finally make a decision in another meeting, which was okay for a time, normal time. And I think it creates a sense of depth in the decision making, but it's definitely not the best approach for this specific period. And I think it's something that we actually can learn for peace times as well, because most of the decisions that we make aren't that relevant or aren't that regrettable in a sense, that we could have made them faster without any major risks. And if we learn how to separate those decisions that are very, very important, and that we cannot go back on, versus those that could be made with less data and less discussion, I think would be better off in the future after this crisis is over. But right now, we gotta be quick, and we gotta make decisions that with imperfect data.
I was not one of the guys calling Eric, but I was waiting very anxious his data the board.
You did call me a couple of times. Let me share what's happening here in the US.
Oh yeah, that's true. But
yeah. Manuel, and what do you think? How long does will take for Brazil economy, and how long it will take for the entrepreneurial community as a whole to feel safe?
It's very hard to tell, because we really don't know how we're going to get out of these lockdown, semi-lockdown situation that we are. I'm kind of a data freak. Eric knows that for this long time together. I'm looking into the data all the time, and the reality is I can't trust on the official data. I don't know how much of that is the reality. And of course, that taking decisions on top of that and doing a prediction is going to be very, very hard. What I do believe is that it's gonna get back close to normal some point in time. The companies that survive are gonna see a very different environment. But the good thing, if we want to have a silver line on that, is maybe twofold. The first one is everything related to technology and digital transformation. We're gonna have a big push on that. It's things that we're waiting years to happen, like telemedicine, remote work, everybody had to have a crash course on that. If you look to your house, your kids from one day to another, they have to learn Zoom, Skype, Microsoft Teams, whatever that they were using to have their classes. If you're trying to do business online, you're using some technology. So people were forced to do that. Business were forced to do that. When you think that, for example, Itaú put like their tens of thousands of employees to remote work from one day to another, that's a big change. I don't believe that we're going to get less digital after the recovery. We're going to be more digital and things are going to accelerate. So that's going to be good news for the ones that are solving those problems. And the other thing is, and that's the sweet spot for entrepreneurs. Which is, entrepreneurs are, how can I say, they are cut to solve problems. And what we're seeing with the COVID crisis is that a lot of things that we imagined that they were ready and that they worked, they weren't. The healthcare system is in way worse situation than we imagined. The communication were worse than that. The way we coordinated for it was worse than we imagined. So that's going to generate lots of opportunities on very relevant problems that affect the lives of a lot of people to be solved. And technology is going to be part of that solution. So that's going to be an interesting thing. So I believe that VCs are going to start to write bigger checks maybe faster than we expect. I just don't know when that's going to happen. If it's 3 months, 6 months, but it's going to happen because what we do is to support and fund those founders to solve those problems. So that's one thing. And the other thing is a lot of things are going to change drastically. The way we look to real estate, to offices, to traveling, corporate travel, events, it's not going to be the same. And we're going to have to see new ways to handle that. So all the crises that we had were the source of lots of innovation and big companies. So I believe that COVID is not going to be different from that. We never saw something that put everybody in the planet talking about the same subject as we saw it now. What is hard to know is how the recovery and the resuming is going to happen, because it changes from one reality to another. It's and we don't have the data. So that's if there is one thing that I bang my head on the wall every day is, okay, the data is too bad. And we need data to take decisions. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if Eric can comment about that, specifically in terms of the ecosystem in Santa Catarina. There are so many amazing companies in Santa Catarina, very active ecosystem, Eric. I wonder what do you think and how are companies there doing?
Yeah, I agree in general with the trends that Manoel mentioned, and in our case, we've been affected by that already because we run this large conference at the end of the year, RD Summit. So this year's conference was scheduled to end of October, and we just canceled the event because. Not only because we don't think it's going to be possible to do that, but we think that events in general are going to change a lot. We don't think that people will be prepared to gather in 5,000 people, 6,000 people in the same room, literally. So it's one of the reasons that we decided to cancel this year's edition. And we'll definitely see major changes in other industries as well. But based on the ecosystem here, I think that it's not different than from what I see in some states in the US and definitely here in Brazil too. We had major disagreements between the mayor, the governor, and the president. And the last couple of weeks, the governor of our state and the mayor of Florianopolis, they basically align on the same strategy. So Santa Catarina is actually the first state to return to normal activities. And in a way, I'm not sure that we're ready for that. And based on Manoel just said, like the data isn't there yet. But at the same time, it will be an interesting task for the rest of the country because like everybody's getting back to work, you know, shopping malls are open again with restrictions and so forth, but people are on the streets again. But based on what I see from other tech entrepreneurs, the good thing about this crisis is that we actually learned how to operate online. And you know, I can talk on behalf of RD, but also by talking to other entrepreneurs here, the tech companies aren't getting back to the office soon here, regardless of the restrictions of the governments. And this will have a significant impact on the way that we run the company, because we used to do a lot of traveling internally, you know, to multiple offices, to, you know, to other parts of the world. Myself, like, you know, I go to the US, to the Bay Area, like 6-7 times per year. I'm not sure that's going to happen, you know, the same amount in the future. And also a lot of
we do hope you come for our conference in September, Eric.
That's a given. That's a given. That's a given. You don't have to,
Great.
to ask about that. By the way, I lost the dinner at your place, so I'm bummed about that because of this.
Well, the invitation is up.
And another thing that Manoel mentioned, I think it's important for the industry, definitely in the Bay Area too, but also here in Floripa, the real estate segment will change a lot. Like for us, you know, every expansion of the company meant that we would expand our office. So we've done 4 phases of office expansion that, frankly, I don't think it's going to make sense in the future anymore. So this will change the whole dynamics of the real estate business in the city here. So it'll be interesting to see. But I'm bullish about the, you know, the silver linings, as Manoel mentioned. Definitely concerned about the recovery of the economy, especially because I think we might have to retreat again if we don't do this right. Like it may, you know, go back to our routines and then have to retreat again, and then that would be a disaster because, you know, the government's trying to do some things to help the small companies and the people who don't have formal jobs in Brazil. But that could only last for a few months, and if we have to do this again, like there won't be any money to support that. The companies will be out of cash, so that could have a domino effect in the economy. And the same thing if the lockdown extends indefinitely. So yeah, I'm very concerned about the level of recovery of the Brazilian economy, especially in the SMB sector that we serve at the end of the day. So.
Yes.
Oh,
Well, we have a question from one of our members in the audience. He's asking what market segment will be positively impacted by this pandemic around the world. Obviously, we hear from Tatiana that the health segment is really impacted, but I think it would be great to hear all of you on that.
I think there are things that are kind of let's say the direct impacts, right? The first order impacts, which is everything related to remote work, remote medicine, telemedicine, education. All those things are going to have an immediate impact. What I'm asking myself is what are going to be the second order and the secondary and tertiary waves of impacts. What's going to happen 1 year from now, for example, with events, because now they're suffering the events basically stopped. But how people are going to do these type of things in the future? So that's something that we need to learn what's going to happen. But everything related to digitalization of business, digitalization of life, that's going to be immediately changed. One thing that I believe it's very important to have in mind, especially for entrepreneurs, is that the incumbents, they are going to gain a lot of edge that they lost over the last years for the tech companies, because they were forced to be more tech savvy with that. So we're going to see incumbents doing more remote work, changing their channels to digital channels, communication, digital channels, sales, digital channels. So a lot of the things that were an advantage for the startups, they're going to somehow be eroded in that space. Imagine, for example, banks. All banks, they're going to have to operate, they're now operating without the branches. And that was one of the advantages of the fintech companies. So there are things things are going to change in all directions. But I'm particularly interested in what are going to be these secondary things, and I don't have the answer for that yet. Paying a lot of attention on what's going to happen. I have one anecdote about that, which is interesting to see how fast things can change in this situation. We have one company called Memed. They have been trying to do digital prescriptions in Brazil over the last 6 years. We invested in them in the seed round. They did many rounds after that. We led one of them as well. And on the beginning of this year, they had a very large number of doctors using their prescription platform. More than 70,000 doctors registered on the product, but very few delivering the prescriptions digitally. They were printing the prescriptions. And we had only one pharmacy doing a test, a pilot, to receive the digital prescriptions. In 2 weeks, they moved from one pharmacy to 10,000. Because otherwise you cannot take the drugs. Yeah. You cannot prescribe if you do not have this type of infrastructure. And the regulation had to accept that. And the whole thing changed in 2 weeks. So those are things that are going to be immediate impact. What are the ones that happens after that? Those are the ones that I believe that we need to pay attention, because there's going to be a lot of opportunities around it. We have another question here from Ralph, which is how much do we estimate that which percentage of the tech companies that did lay off staff since the beginning of the COVID-19 crisis? I don't have precise figures for that, but I believe looking to our portfolio and news here, easily something around maybe 50% or more of the companies laid off people, because that was a matter of extending the runway, prioritizing projects, and of course that they did that in different ways. Some of them had to do more deep cuts, depending on how directly and profoundly the business was impacted. But others, as they were expecting less growth, they had to do that anyway. So, and then I think that we have maybe 25, 30% of companies, between 20 and 40, let's say, that didn't change much, but they are not hiring. So they changed the growth plans. They're trying to sustain the existing workforce. Maybe they're gonna be a little bit more, how can I say, hard on the proactive turnover for taking out low performers and things like that. I believe that that's something that we're seeing. And a few companies, maybe 10, 15%, are the companies that are being forced to hire more because of the crisis. And those are the companies like Tati, Memed, if they had the cash, which is another question, because sometimes you are in that situation and you don't have the cash. So the companies that were lucky enough to be to have closed rounds months before the crisis, they're in a better position to do that. But I believe that the majority, even for the tech companies, is they laid off people. And even worse for small business, restaurants, mom and dad shops. We're seeing very, very bad things. We're seeing the numbers in the US, and actually we're hoping that that thing ends as fast as we can, because we need to stop talking about the crisis and talk more about the recover. I know that we're gonna survive. I know that entrepreneurship is gonna thrive, but it's not gonna be without pain. It's and that's the situation that we're seeing.
Very challenging indeed, Manuel. And we are getting at the end of our chat. I always try to finish with a message from our speakers and moderators to young people. So I would love for you to say a word, to say an advice to young entrepreneurs who are struggling right now, who don't have the ability to continue managing without new funds. So, or to young future entrepreneurs, to those who are planning to come into this boat. So I would love to hear your messages. Would you like to start, Tatiana?
Yes. So my message is this. Like, entrepreneurship is more like a marathon than a sprint. So we have to have endurance, you have to have resilience. It's not my first prize, it's the third, and everything pass. This is my message. So we have to focus, to pay attention to cash, to stay connected to our team. I agree that Eric said that the COVID impact the way we run our companies. We have to stay connected the more we can. Talk to the company. I think it's better to over communicate than don't communicate. So stay connected, pay attention to cash. It's not about a sprint, it's a marathon. So you have to have resilience. And I'm a marathon runner, so I do believe that it's almost like going to the 30 kilometer that you stay like, oh gosh, when is going to finish? But when we see the final line, I say, oh, when is the next? So stay safe, take care of your companies, take care of your people, stay close to them, ask them if they are okay, ask about their family, their health, and this is my message for everybody.
Eric, would you like to pick it up from there?
Yeah, I love those lines of over communicate. I think this is especially important now in a situation that, you know, everybody's working from home, and as we mentioned, everybody's anxious and you know, looking forward to hear more from the leaders of the company. So I think that would be the first one. So good advice for every entrepreneur out there. But for especially for the younger ones, they're going through this for the first time. I would say that, well, I've never gone through any crisis this big. I'm not sure that even Manoel, who's the oldest guy in the room here, has done that. But my message would be that, you know, you're not alone. So like, everybody's going through the same thing, and then there's always somebody that you can talk to, even if it's just to, you know, just share your feelings. Because the reality that I see in a lot of companies, entrepreneurs, that everybody's trying to think and do things by themselves, which is what makes them good entrepreneurs in normal ways. But in a moment of crisis like this, like, it's always good to share learnings and struggles and reactions with other fellow entrepreneurs. So just you know, find somebody who you can talk to, or find an organization that can help you, or, you know, talk to one of the people at Vittute there, but just let it out, because I think it will help to get through this emotionally. Do therapy.
Yeah, I'm doing mine with Zoom. Is part of the staying safe and sane during these times. I believe that on top of what Eric and Tati said, what I like about the environment that we are and the ecosystem that we are is that I do believe since I started coding and did the engineering school and then became entrepreneur and now investor, that entrepreneurship and technology are two of the major forces to transform the world. And it's our role to apply that human ingenuity on solving problems. I believe that this crisis is going to be very bad. We're going to be talking about that for decades. We're going to have a lot of people that passed away. It's going to be a hard time for we as a humanity, but it's a wake up call as well. That there are a lot of things that needs to be improved, that can be improved, that we can do better. And entrepreneurs are going to find ways to improve life and make other people's life better and to reduce the pain. And that's all about what we do. And we have to keep doing. We have to keep walking, looking forward. It's not going to be easy, but I'm sure that we're going to end up stronger after that. And let's stay together, because it's like Eric said, it's the time where you have to be aware that you don't have all the answers, you don't have all the data. I would love to have all the data. I don't have all the data. We don't know what's going to happen, but we have each other. We can share, we can learn, we can complain, we can do a lot of things. Not everything is going to be perfect, but we can do that. And so I believe that, Margaris, it's very good that you put that in place. A lot of people are having their very bad moments as entrepreneur now, their hard times in their lives. As Eric said, that's going to be the craziest, maybe the craziest we're going to see, I hope. And let's do it together. Yeah, there's a lot of things to be done. Let's solve them.
Time to
Great,
build.
guys.
Yeah.
Really appreciate you sharing your struggles, your accomplishment. There is a lot of hurt in the business community out there. So appreciate the inspiring thoughts. Muito obrigada. Thank you, Tatiana. Eric, good to see you again. Manuel, always great to have you. Muito obrigada. Keep up the great work, guys. And we'll touch base with you very soon again.
Okay.
Okay. Eric, I'm going to call you. Just 5 minutes.
And for those of you joining us, thank you so much. Tête-a-Tech will be weekly, so you can check our social media channels, find out about the next topics. Corporate venture capital and the growth of streaming services is among the topics that we are covering next. Muito obrigada. Ciao.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Ciao.
Stay safe.